Hello everyone, welcome to Fullmoon Movies. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest is not simply a story about rebellion inside a psychiatric hospital. It is a film about how systems exert control, how conformity is enforced quietly rather than violently, and how individuality is often tolerated only until it becomes inconvenient. Watching the film today in 4K, its emotional and political weight feels undiminished, if anything, more visible in its details, silences, and performances. At the center of the film is Jack Nicholson as Randall Patrick McMurphy, a character who enters the institution believing he can outsmart it. Nicholson plays McMurphy with charisma, humor, and defiance, but what makes the performance enduring is not the bravado. It's the slow realization that charm alone cannot dismantle a system designed to outlast individuals. McMurphy is not a saint or a revolutionary thinker. He is impulsive, selfish, sometimes cruel. But he represents something far more dangerous to institutional order, which is unpredictability. The mental institution is not portrayed as overly brutal. That is the film's most unsettling choice. Control is exercised through routine, language, and compliance rather than chains. Medication replaces violence. Therapy replaces punishment. The hospital functions smoothly, politely, and efficiently, which is precisely why it feels suffocating. The film suggests that modern systems rarely need cruelty when obedience can be cultivated through fear and exclusion. Opposite McMurphy stands Lucy Fletcher as Nurse Ratched, one of the cinema's most chilling figures of authority. Fletcher does not play her as a villain in the traditional sense. There is no shouting, no rage, no over malice. Nurse Ratched's power lies in her calmness, her unwavering belief in procedure, and her refusal to acknowledge emotional reality. She never raises her voice because she doesn't need to. The system speaks for her. Now, what makes Nurse Ratched terrifying is that she believes she is right. Now, she sees herself as a caretaker, not an oppressor, and the film never undermines that belief overtly. It lets the audience feel the consequences instead. This ambiguity is crucial. The film is not arguing that institutions are run by monsters, it's arguing that harm often comes from people who believe deeply in order over humanity. The supporting patients are not caricatures, even one represents a different response to control, fear, resignation, dependence, internalized shame. Now, characters like Chief Bromden, Billy Bibbit, and Maritini are not simply there to be saved by McMurphy. They are men whose identities have been shaped by long exposure to authority that tells them they are broken. The tragedy is not just that they are institutionalized, is that many of them could leave but no longer believe they can survive outside. McMurphy's greatest act of rebellion is not violence, but disruption. Laughter, gambling, fishing trips, small acts of chaos. Now, these moments restore agency. However, that's only briefly. Now, the film treats joy as a form of resistance, but it also acknowledges the cost of that resistance. Every act of defiance increases the system's need to reassert control. Freedom in this world is tolerated only as long as it remains symbolic. Now, what makes One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest so powerful is that it refuses to romanticize rebellion. McMurphy's influence is transformative, but it is also destructive. His inability to compromise ultimately brings consequences not just for himself, but also for others. The film does not present defiance as a guaranteed path to liberation. It presents it as a necessary risk, one that may fail but matters nonetheless. The film's final act is devastating precisely because it feels inevitable. Once McMurphy crosses the invisible line, once his resistance becomes personal rather than performative, the system responds with finality. Now, the lobotomy is not framed as punishment but as a correction. Now, that framing is what makes it horrifying. The institution does not see itself as violent, it sees itself as restoring order. Chief Bromden's arc is essential to understand the film's emotional resolution. His silence, long mistaken for incapacity, now it reveals it's all about survival. He watches, listens, remembers. McMurphy's legacy is not just about victory but awakening, not of the institution, but of the individual who finally understands what freedom requires. The ending is not a triumphant in a conventional sense. It's a quiet, painful, and profoundly human. Now, in the 4K, the film's realism becomes more intimate. The close-ups reveal fatigue, fear, and suppressed emotions in a way that heightens the film's psychological impact. Nicholson's expressive face, the confidence early on, the frustrations later, the exhaustion near the end, all gains new clarity. Louise Fletcher's stillness becomes even more unrevering. The hospital's sterile interiors feels more oppressive, not because they are ugly, but because they are clean and orderly. The 4K presentation represents the film's natural lighting and grounded color palette. This is not a film that benefits from visual polish or modern stylization, but its power lies in authenticity, in the sense that these people feel really trapped in a system that looks functional from the outside and destructive from within. The restoration enhances the presence rather than spectacle. Now, what makes One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest timeless is its universality. While it is set in a psychiatric hospital, the film speaks to any environment where hierarchy replaces empathy. Workplaces, schools, governments, even families. It asks the uncomfortable questions about how much individuality society is willing to tolerate and who gets to decide what normal really means. Unlike many films about rebellion, this one does not reassure the audience. It does not suggest that fighting the system guarantees change. Instead, it argues that resistance matters because it reminds others of what has been lost. McMurphy does not dismantle the institution, but he disrupts its illusion of inevitability. Ultimately, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest is not about madness. It's about control disguised as care and the fragile courage required to challenge it. Watching it in 4K does not make it feel modernized. It makes it feel closer, more immediate, more difficult to dismiss as a product of its time. It remains one of the cinema's most uncompromising examinations of power, conformity, and the cost of being fully human. Now, this movie is a must-watch.